It's a labor of love. Right, Newman? Right. Now I've talked about the parts, I've shown you guys the build process, talked about all the little problems we've encountered along the way, and I'm sure you guys have heard enough from me, and I tend to talk a lot. So as we go through these glamour shots of Dark Crystal, there are just a couple things I want to mention. The Prima-Chill fluid came out a bit darker than I had hoped, and it's likely because it's UV reactant and would look much more purpley under the right lighting. Nevertheless, it's a nice deep shade of purple that unfortunately comes across as looking very blue on camera. I can assure you in person that the coloring matches our cable set quite nicely, and I won't be looking to swap it out anytime soon. The Corsair fans have a default setting that's a nice light shade of purple, almost like a lavender. I'd like to get their new Commander Pro install to dial in a more accurate color profile for the fans, but for now I think this looks pretty on point. I had some uncharacteristic problems with this batch of Bits Power fittings, where the finish started rubbing off as I was tightening them down. What happened was, after the initial fill, I had a few very minor leaks at the G1/4 ends of 3 of the fittings, apparently because they had come a little loose while angling them after the install. The only way to torque them quickly with the system full of and leaking coolant was, unfortunately, with a pair of pliers, and even though I tried gripping through a paper towel, the white finish still rubbed off a bit. I'll be following up with Bits Power about this, but I don't think it takes much away from the overall appearance. Other than that though, smooth sailing. I had the system up and running shortly after a relatively brief leak test. I don't want to bore you guys with a bunch of charts, so how about we dive right in and do some live gaming benchmarks. Alright guys, we have arrived at our desktop. Now you're going to see me looking up and to the right, or I guess to your left, but that's because what I wanted to do is run these tests on my 4K monitor, which I actually have mounted up and above, kind of out of the way. It's what I use to do testing with my test bench, because I want to have something that I could run 4K applications on if I need to. For these purposes, I want to be able to run these games and tests at 4K, and my ultra wide is not capable of that, so I hooked it up there, and you're going to see me looking in that direction. So what we're looking at right now is hardware monitor, and we could see what I did with the overclock here. Now I have it set at 4 gigahertz. That is my normal daily 24/7 overclock for this chip. This 6900K, I know from prior experience with 2 other boards, hits 4.4 gigahertz pretty easily. Has a difficult time going a little bit faster than that. We got to start cranking the voltages up pretty high, and I don't particularly like doing that for any long period of time. 4 gigahertz is my daily overclock. If I'm not trying to set any kind of crazy stupid records or something for a benchmark, 4 gigahertz is going to be plenty fast. It's on all cores. It's at 1.35 volts. And you can see at that overclock we are running, in the low to mid 30s in general. Package is a little bit warmer, and these are our peaks, but that's just from some things I was running before. but you can see that the temperatures are nice and low. And similarly with our graphics cards, we're running at 34C at idle right now on the graphics cards. So we're nice and cool right now. But what I want to do is start stressing it a little bit and see where the temperatures go. So I have Precision X up right now. You can see that this is our overclock. We're plus 175 on the core, plus 400 on the memory. Only a tiny voltage bump. This is basically at stock voltage. These cards are unreal. They're so powerful and they overclock so well without any real effort. So these are the overclocks we're going to be running on the graphics cards. Let me bring up Unigine Heaven and start that looping. And the EVGA Precision X should hook. It is not hooking. That is unfortunate. But even though it's not hooking, this is going to loop, and you can see our temperatures are going to go up a little bit on our graphics cards over here. We're at 41, 42C. And I ran this yesterday with overclock of a plus 150 on the core for 12 to 15 minutes, and temperatures didn't move from here. I mean, this is just where they stayed. This is pretty amazing. So if I bring up Precision X, we'll be able to check out our clock speeds. And I'm not sure why the on-screen display is not hooking here, but we are at a stable 2062 and not moving. So the temperatures are 41, 42C, the clock's 2062, and just sticking right there. Oh, we went down a little bit. All right, making me a liar. Thanks. So we're at 2050. I mean, not fluctuating really very much at all. So I think that this is a real nice stable overclock, and temperatures are more than reasonable. These are downright chilly. So let's add in a little more stress, and we're going to start up the IDA64 stress test. And this is more load than any system will see during any normal everyday workload. You're never going to get a program that will do this to your system. I don't know what's happening. Heaven, are you still running? Okay, having a little bit of problem here. Okay, we're back. I don't know what happened. It just kind of jammed up for a second. But you could see that utilization on our CPU cores are just maxed out right now. And the temperatures are in the mid-upper 50s, hitting 60 every once in a while. Which, I mean, for a workload that we will never be able to replicate with real-world tasks is phenomenal. So this loop is doing well for us. Let's move on, get some scores and some gaming benchmarks. So as you can see, I switched over to a separate camera setup. I want to make sure that I'm capturing the full frame rate that we have going on here, and using capture software. Even lightweight capture software does have an impact. So I'm just going to be filming my monitor screen, which I'm not a huge fan of generally, but I think it's going to work in this case. You guys could see, hopefully, the frame rate up in the upper right hand corner, right up here, and I'm going to try to enlarge that in post and give you guys a better look at it. But this is Wildlands. This is a new game called Ghost Recon Wildlands. Very taxing game, and I have never played it before. It's not part of my benchmarking suite, and I like to occasionally try to switch it up. So we're going to be adding some different games in and seeing how they perform. So let's take a look at our settings. Obviously, we're going to be full screen, 4K, no VSync. And then if we go into our graphics settings, this is the Ultra preset with AA off. That's the only reason it says custom and not Ultra, but everything here is on the Ultra preset. So let's go ahead and run the benchmark and see how it goes. $69.08. That is a pretty good result. Now, I was running this before, like I said, with maybe some capture software running, and I was getting returns about 65 frames per second. So, and then if I had OBS running, I was down in the 50s. So this is a more accurate representation of what the system can actually do. I like this benchmark because it shows you your general utilization, your min-max, and then some information about your system, I guess if you didn't know. And then it saves the benchmark result. So it's good to go back and take a look at later on when you make some changes. But let's go on to our second one. So we are into For Honor. For Honor came out earlier this year, I guess. I did some beta gameplay on my Razer Blade. It did not run that well. Again, pretty taxing, pretty new game. And I think it'll make a good benchmark because it does have a nice built-in canned benchmark. And we like those. So here are our settings. This is going to be on extreme. This next bump up is custom. So this is just the extreme preset. I'm going to turn off AA as I always do when I'm running at 4K, but everything else should be maxed out. So we're going to apply our changes and then we're going to run the benchmark. So 118.61 average, 45 min is pretty low, but you can see that we did have these kinds of dips in all of the zones of the test. So I'm not sure what's going on there to make it go down that low. But when the benchmark was running, I did notice that there was some micro stuttering happening. It's become less of an issue as SLI implementation has matured, but still is a problem when you are running multiple graphics cards. So that is something to be aware of. It is yet another reason why people might want to stay away and just go with a single graphics card setup. But it does happen, unfortunately, and it was happening here during the benchmarking run. But still a very impressive result at 4K 118 frames per second. And on to the third one. Welcome to Battlefield 1. This is not a game that I ever really got into, but when it was released, I was really impressed with the way they designed this game. The textures, the look, everything, the feel felt authentic. And I kind of wish that I had played it because it is a really great game. And it really can tell you something about your system because, again, not easy to run. So let's take a look at our settings. As always, 4K, no VSync. Nothing else really that important here, but we're going to go over to advanced. We're running in DX12 mode with a custom preset. Basically, this is everything on ultra and no AA, as we tend to do. So let's jump into it. We're going to play the first scene. You'll be able to see the frame counter up in the upper right, which, like I said, I'm going to try to enlarge, and we'll see what kind of frame rates we're getting. So this is about as far as I have gotten in this game. This is just like a couple of maybe an hour or two into the gameplay with the tank, and you're searching around here for some parts. But look how beautiful this game is. It's really well done. But you can see our frame rates in the mid 70s right now, with all this open worldness going on. Once you get into close quarters, obviously you're gonna be in a situation where your frame rates are likely going to increase. I would like to get a different gun. How about that? That would be great. So we've come up on this town here, and I'm not going to play through this whole scenario, but you can see the frame rates in the upper right, like I said, mid-70s, even getting up into the 80s sometimes. But, you know, this game is still running really good, and even with everything maxed out at 4K, we're above 60 frames per second using the game engine. Can't complain about that at all. I would like to see if I could get into like a firefight or something and see how the frame rates do, but I'm not going to be taking this very seriously, and I likely will die very quickly. But let me just headshot this dude, or not. Yeah, so frame rates staying pretty much the same, looking pretty good. What did I even shoot? I have no... Oh, I think I shot that thing. Alright, so yeah, frame rate's not really suffering at all, even though we got some explosions and whatnot happening. Let me run away from this dude shooting me. Yeah, looks great. Stop it. Stop it. All right. I'm gonna go grab this guy's gun and move on to the 4th benchmark. Welcome to Rise of the Tomb Raider. This has become one of my favorite benchmarks despite some hiccups when it was first released. Since the end of last year, they've released a patch that adds multi-GPU support and fixes a few other things. And now, I really like it. It's a very nice way to show what your system can do. So we're running DX12. 4K, no AAA. Everything else is maxed out. Very high preset. I don't know if this is maxed out, but this is how I run this test. Very high preset. Basically takes everything up to at least almost the maximum. And let's get it going. Pretty nice, 142 frames per second in 4K. Wow, that is impressive. We got one more benchmark to run, so let's hop on over to it right now. I'm sure you guys are familiar with TimeSpy by now, and this is going to be what caps off our benchmarking session. So let's run through it and see what kind of results we get. And we've got a valid result, and not a bad one either. Now, I used to have a TimeSpy score that was in the Hall of Fame. I think when the 1080s first came out, and I was running them in SLI. But again, not trying to break any records here, not pushing this overclock as far as it could possibly go. This is a daily driver overclock. It's perfectly stable for me, and this is more than most people need. Definitely more than I need. So I am happy with this, to say the least. So guys, that is it for our latest adventure in water cooling. How do you guys think that it went? Would you have done anything differently? Do you think the parts that I chose were good, bad? What do you think? Let me know down below in the comments. Thanks so much for sticking around for all 3 parts of this series. If you guys did happen to miss the other ones, I'll link it down in the video description. But leave me a comment, talk to me about this build, let me know what you think. And don't forget to get subscribed to the channel if you're not already. We're about 500 subscribers from 10,000, and you guys know what happens at 10,000. Wait, do you? Do you know what happens at 10,000? We're giving away a full PC, so make sure you get subscribed to the channel. Thanks so much for watching as always, and I'll see you in the next video.